Hey everyone, I'm Ananya and I hope you already know who I am. I'm a watercolor artist, developer by day, but an artist on bricks. So if you subscribe, which you already might have, to my mailing list, expect a lot of fun things, and this is one of them. This is the first one actually. So if you've subscribed to my mailing list, you might have gotten a free email and a free mail if you've opted for it. So in the mail you'll get artist grade watercolor paper and some artist grade paint. Apart from that, all you'll need is a round brush and some water and clean tissues. We'll talk about that in a second. If you don't have the kit, that's completely fine. That means you already have watercolors, so that's great. Let's talk about what we're gonna learn today. So we are gonna look at what are the basics, what are values, how do we mix watercolors and some strokes, and we'll look at some really interesting watercolor techniques. Okay, let's go through the kit ones. In the kit you would have these two, right? You'll have a dot card and you'll have this kind of paper. It's a textured paper and it is 100% cotton. 300 GSM are the best kinds of paper that I personally love to use. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same paper so you can figure out the same size. Apart from the paper, what you'll need is some clean water in a jar, a brush. I'm going to be using a normal Faber-Castell size 7. You can use size 4, 5, whatever you have at hand. And apart from that, I'm going to use a simple paper towel or any kind of kitchen towel that you have. What I've done for the session here right now is just taken out these into my palette. You can either do that as well or you can use them directly from here. That is completely fine. And to get started, you can use the dots. They'll go quite a long way. Okay, so let's get started. So before we begin, let me just tell you the names of these colors. This is yellow deep, yellow, or you can call it a game beige. This is called vermilion and this one is called ultramarine, and these three are warm primaries. And we're going to look at how there are watercolor values. We're going to swatch it out a bit. We're going to have a color grid, and we're going to look at some different ways to use them. Okay, so let's get started. I'm just going to mark what we're going to do so that it's easier for everybody to follow along. We're going to discuss values here. Let's say we start from 1 and go up to 5, and you can mark something like a 2, 3 and 4 for your reference. And before we do that, let's just go ahead and write out whatever we're gonna do. So we have yellow deep that we'd swatch out. We'll swatch out vermilion. Excuse my handwriting, this is quite a textured paper. So my handwriting won't come out that well, though it's not as great anyways. Okay, and let's make a color grid as well. So we'll start with the color grid because the color grid needs to dry out. Let me just get my scale and make so I'm going to make 1.5 inch squares and 4x4 grid for this. Okay, now that we are done with making the color grid, let's also type out or just write out what you're gonna do below this. Cool. So I'm just going to also, okay, let's just finish this first and then we'll go ahead and make the second half of this. So what I want you to do is pick any of these colors, whichever you think is your favorite. I don't have favorites as such, but I think I'm gonna just take some blue. So what you want to essentially do is put some water on your dot and let it sit for like 5 seconds, let's say. Okay, and then just pull it out like so. If you have a palette nearby, that's fine, but you can pull it out on the paper itself. I've kept some space here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, this is pure paint that I have, like it's a lot of color and bare minimum water just to activate the paint. Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and sort of swatch out this. Okay, Now what I'm going to do is add like a drop of water, and you can see that the consistency of the paint starts changing, and just swatch it out. And as you can see, the consistency of the paint changes, so does the transparency level. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more water, and I'm going to bring it down and swatch again. As you can see, as we go below, just add another drop of water. As we go below, the level of pigment starts decreasing, level of water starts increasing. Okay, take your time doing this, don't worry about the speed. You can always pause this video and play it again whenever you want to, and just start bringing down the pigment. And now for the last part, just clean your brush completely, have some water in it, that's it, and go ahead and just sort of add water. So now the pigment will just start coming down, and it's a very, very thin sort of pigment that's left in the end. Okay, I'm just trying to bring this down a little bit so that you can see it better. And this is what we call values. So this is the darkest value or highest value as such. This is the lightest value, and the more artistic grade paints that they are and the less fillers the paint has, the more values you can extend it to. Okay, now let's go ahead and look at swatches. So let's first do the yellow deep, or Indian yellow is what someone calls it. Similar way we'll do it. We'll just take like thick paint, we'll add it here like so. Just like we did here, let's add some water, and I still have some pigment on my brush. I don't know if you can see it. And just gonna add it here and sort of pull that paint down. And now I'm gonna clean my brush, and I'm just going to bring it completely down. So you can see that hue that is being made. We'll do the same thing with vermilion that we have. Okay, in case you don't have the kit at the moment, any usual watercolor set will have these colors. You might have the cool variants of it, that is also completely fine, but make sure that you use only 3 either warm or cool pigments for this. Okay, and now I'm gonna go ahead with the blue again. And just add the last bit like so and let it flow. This is a very nice way to get to know your colors and get to know your paper. So swatching is one of my favorite activities. Whenever I'm in an art block, I'll just go ahead and swatch stuff. Okay, now for the color grade, what we're going to do, color grade or color wheel, you can call it anything. Basically we're going to mix all permutations, combinations of the color and try to figure out like what colors it makes. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is, I know we said we'll start with the color grade, but we didn't. That's okay. Just try to keep it in between the lines so it doesn't bleed out to the neighboring corners. I'm just gonna go ahead and get some red. You can use a value 1 or 2 for this, that's fine. Oops, I think we mixed the colors a bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the corner of my clean paper towel and just dab here so that it creates a sort of area with no water or no pigment. Hence I used a 1.5 centimeter square so that we can swatch it out, but it's not sort of completely, you don't need to fill the complete thing. You can just swatch a little bit and keep some space. What we need to do with the swatching is not basically color in the squares, but to understand how the colors mix. So just having like a little, even a little idea about how the color looks is perfectly fine. Now what I'm going to do is use a value 4 out here. So I'm just going to take the lighter value of the same exact color of yellow and add it here. Almost looks like a different color, doesn't it? Just by sort of changing the value, you sort of see a different face of the color. Similarly for the ultramarine. Nothing super complicated, just simple squares. Take your time and fill these out. Okay, now what you're gonna do is mix equal amounts of the yellow. Okay, by equal amounts, just I mean in your head, you don't need to worry about having like pigment by pigment the correct formulation. See, if you see this is too red, you can just go ahead and add some yellow to it. Okay, this looks good to me. I think this is a nice color that's made, so I'm just gonna add it here. Since it's a mix of red and yellow. Okay, now I'm just gonna add some water to it to reduce the value and add it in the diagonally opposite square or area or whatever you want to call it, and just add a little bit more red because this looks almost like the yellow that we have. But yeah, this is what it should look like. Yours can look a little different depending on how much red or how much yellow you've put in. Okay, and what you're gonna do now is gonna do the same thing with blue. So I'm just gonna have some yellow here and take some blue and mix it in. Gonna see what it looks like. I think it's a perfect little mix. So I'm just gonna add it here. Yellow and blue shall create did I mess up? No, I did not. Okay, so this is fine. We have yellow and blue creating green. Now we'll just add some more water to this to create a lower value, and we'll just add it here. Okay, 1 second, my bad. So if you want to pick up color, just do this. Sometimes this magic works, sometimes it doesn't, depending on how much how the pigment is basically for your watercolor. So I'm just going to take the green, and we have the, so this is blue and yellow. Okay, so I was right. Okay, the color grids are sometimes tricky but they're really nice to make and really nice to understand color and values and how the same color can look quite different given two different values. Now what I'm going to do is mix some red and clean my brush. Okay, so you can see that there's this puddle thing going on. If you don't want colors mixing, you can just tap on this like so. Just remove the place it's getting mixed up in. So I'm just going to take another clean paper towel because mine is dirty. And what I'm going to do now is just get some nice blue and add it to the red. I think we have a decently nice purple made. Let me just add a little bit more very thin blue. Yeah, I think I'm happy with the color. And now I'm just gonna, we have red and we have blue, so here we'll add the purple that we just made. It's a very beautiful, very quite vibrant purple. So there's this trick with colors. If you're not getting very vibrant colors when you mix things, then you probably are mixing the wrong temperature of colors, which is using something like a cerulean blue with a vermilion. Cerulean blue is a cool blue, and this one is an ultramarine blue, which is a warm blue, and we are using warm primaries for this exercise. Now what I'm going to do is something fun. So I'm just going to take some yellow, just going to take some red, okay, and some blue. What do you think that this color will come out to be? So let's mix and just try it out. I'm just going to take some more yellow, I think it's less, and I'll mix it, and it's a pure brown, as you can see. That's how you make brown. Brown is a secondary color, sorry, tertiary color. I'm just going to add brown here because that is where we are sort of mixing all three colors. So I'm just gonna go ahead and add this. what you can do now in the remaining, you can either let them be or color them brown, or what I like to do is, if this is value 1 or 2 and this is 4 and 5, I'll add some like value 3 of sorts. So you can either do that, or what I'm gonna do is just create dots of it, just to give it a little distinction of it not being the same thing of sorts. I don't know if I'm making complete sense at the moment, but yeah. So I really hope that you're doing this while I am also doing this. Like, feel free to pause me or speed me up if I'm going slow for you. I wouldn't mind, trust me. Okay, so let's go ahead, and now that we understand these colors, we'll make them again. Don't worry about it being not there on the palette, we'll make them again. So what I'm going to do now is just take any color that is there. I'll just take red, for example. I'm going to show you some brush control techniques. So basically just keep your brush really light in your hand and just make like very thin lines like so. It might take some practice, so you can have like a rough paper lying around and try it on that. But yeah, just try some weird shapes, weird strokes. Just try to control the brush with your hand. Another thing that you can try out is using so just make a straight line and then push the brush down, like stamp it and then bring it up. So when you do that, you'll get this leaf sort of shape that will help you in other things. So we won't discuss this in detail, but you can use this kind of thing to make roses, to make leaves, to make plants, flowers, and a lot of things, even waves. So for that, you can join like any workshop that I take. There are a lot that I keep on taking. This workshop is mainly, or this session, or this sort of class, I'd say, is just for you to get started and break that barrier for you to just not be afraid of watercolors or be away from watercolors. It's a beautiful medium. So yeah, I just want you to enjoy it like I do. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna flip this over when this is completely dry. So I'll just grab some water, and you can pause the video, let this dry, think about what you did. If you want to try it again, try it out on another paper and just see how it goes. And we'll meet back in a couple of seconds for you, but a couple of minutes for me. Oh, and before you break, just get some salt for me, please. Okay, so let's get started. This is completely dried, so I'm just going to use the back side of this. I'll lay it down. We're going to use the same technique: paper towel, brush. Like I said, I hope you got some salt. This is some usual kitchen salt that is there. What I'm going to do now is just write out what all we're going to try out. If you want, you can make boxes or just let it be as is. What I'll do is I'll make boxes for you so that it's easier for you to remember what we're doing and things don't get mixed up. I really hope my boxes are equal. They're not. That's okay. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. Just for the sake of consistency, I'm gonna purposefully go wrong and create the same size of boxes that I did in the first row. These are just rough boxes that I'm creating for you, so you don't need to create these. It's just totally up to you. Okay, so the first thing that we'll discuss is called the wet on wet technique. Then we have wet on dry. Again, excuse my handwriting, please. Okay, let's discuss a flat wash, and let's also discuss lifting here on the flat wash on one side of it, so that just that you can understand what we're doing. There's understand layering. Let's figure out how to blend. Let's see how we can use a dry paper and dry brush, or you can call it a dry on dry, sort of like wet on dry. And just give these names as well. So this is dry on dry, and then let's look at how to make the colors bloom. Sometimes this may be a desirable or an undesirable effect. And then let's look at one of my favorite techniques called salting. This we'll look at last. So let's get started. So for the wet and wet technique, let's just mix all three colors and see what happens. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet. Okay, my paintbrush already had some kind of color. That's okay. For this case it's okay. Usually, like, the best practice is to get a new bowl of water. Why did I say it in a very British accent? Bowl of water. Okay, I don't know if I'm gonna edit this or just let it be. It's okay, let's see. So I'm just taking some yellow paint and just adding like a few dabs of it. Notice that I'm not dragging it around or something. I'm just sort of stippling it in a place. Just gonna take some red, gonna add it here. I love how the color just keeps on like going here and there. In this area, let's just take the orange. Either you can let it mix here itself, or you can mix it otherwise and just add that orange here. Whatever is easier for you. It's gonna mix eventually. So now I'm gonna take some blue and I'm gonna mix it. I'm gonna add it here. And when it touches the red or yellow, either you can choose to use the mixed paint or let it mix like organically. That's also fine. I'm just gonna make some green. I can make a little bit more for future use. Just gonna add it here just so that it's blending nicely, and just sort of understand that wet on wet just helps the color go around. You don't have to worry about, and you might not be able to control it completely, but that's also the beauty of watercolors. Now let's look at how wet on dry works. Let me just take the brown pigment that we have, and this is a dry area, and I'm just gonna add paint over here. And you can see that there is a difference to how you add it here, because it won't blend. If we add something here, let's say green, we can add green here like so. So with primary colors, you can just make any color honestly. If you want to make pastels, you just need some white. But yeah, that's about it. I think white and three primary colors and you're good to go, and like you can make anything. Okay, now let me just go ahead and make a flat wash. For the flat wash, if you have a flat brush, any brush, Camlin, Faber-Castell, anything's fine. So if you have a flat brush, you can just quickly use that. Or in my case, let me go ahead and make a, which color do we make? Let's make some green swatches. Okay, you can also play around, and let's say in the blue itself, you just add a hint of yellow and not completely, so it's a deeper green. So for a flat wash, what you're gonna do is just gonna put the color here. This is an interesting color that we just made. It's almost like Payne's Gray, and this was made using ultramarine blue mixed with very little amount of yellow. So this is interesting. It's like a pre-green color. Okay, so this is what a flat wash looks like. It's basically a flat wash of color, nothing else. Okay, with a flat brush it comes even better. But I don't know what brush you have. You might have like a minimum of a round brush, so I'm just trying to be inclusive here with respect to what you have. Okay, with respect to layering, the first step would be to just go ahead and layer out, like put out a very, like a flat wash itself, but keep it like a low value. Don't keep it like extremely dark, so that when we layer we can see what happens. Okay, now let's see how we can blend colors. So let's just blend, and by blending I do not mean mixing, I mean genuinely blending the color itself. So I'm just going to, like in the swatches that we did, just gonna get the color to come down. And then I'm gonna add some water here. This is optional. I mean, even if you don't add water, it's gonna work. So I'll just remove some excess water that I... So to remove excess water, just take a damp brush, let it drink the water, and just dab it again. So yeah, it gets less, what do you say, puddly of sorts. Okay, I just added some red here and below. I'm gonna clean my brush now and let it be damp, not super wet, and I'm just gonna go ahead and try to encourage the color upwards. Again, with a clean damp brush, I'm trying to sort of get the blending to go up. Okay. Oops. So you can see that we did not make orange out here. We are just blending the two colors, and this is really helpful when you're making something like sunsets or basically any kind of painting. Don't like any landscape sort of painting, making a sky and all that will help out here. Now for dry brush technique, what we're gonna do is, it's a dry brush, it can be a little bit damp, that's okay. Okay, and I'm just gonna take some, what color do we take? Let's take some blue. Okay, just apply it on the brush. Now just almost clean it. So there is pigment on the brush, but it's not like a lot, and it does not have a lot of water. So just gonna go ahead and lightly sort of like we did when we were kids, like with coin paper, right? Put the coin below and then put the paper above and put a pencil, and the effect would come up, like the coin shape would come up. Similarly, the grains of the paper, whatever paper you're using, will start to come up. This might not work with low textured papers or cold press papers, like really smooth, or hot press papers, sorry, that are really smooth. The texture is not there, so the texture does not come up, but you can still try it out. Like, there is no harm in trying. This can be used in making water, making sparkles, I mean, on water bodies and things like that. Now what I'm gonna do is, before we do anything else, let me just take some, or let me just make some rather, some nice little purple. Okay, this is quite a deep, nice purple, and I'm just gonna do a sort of like a flat wash itself. Okay, and now we're gonna do some magic. Make sure your hand is dry. Take a pinch of salt, add it to your piece of color box. Just a little bit will do. I'm just doing some extra just for fun. Why I did this before, so that while we finish the other stuff, the sort of effect starts to come out, and then we can sort of go through what it is. Okay, now let's try blooming. I'm gonna take some blue, and I'm just gonna go ahead and, oops, that's a lot of color. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and just put a flat wash of sorts. Okay, but what I'm gonna do now is take my brush with like a drop of water that's almost going to come out, and I'm gonna just hit it like that. The water will start spreading, and it's going to create a beautiful effect, and you'll see really soon how it looks like. Let's go back to the lifting. We're gonna take a clean damp brush, it's not too wet, not too dry, and just try to pick up pigment from here, like so. As you pick up the pigment, oops, as you pick up the pigment, make sure that you keep sort of cleaning your brush in middle. And this will depend on how staining your color is, that how much color comes out, but you can try. This is really helpful in making clouds. You can even alternatively use a paper towel and try to damp and pick up the paint like we saw before. Okay, cool. Let's just look at layering now. So this is one layer of paint. Let me just go ahead and get a nice little blue. And what I'm going to do is just sort of layer it on top. I'm going to take it out, this one, so I can show you how it looks like when you don't have a layer behind and when you do. Now you can clearly figure out, even if this line was not there, and even if we have only this part, you can clearly figure out that this area, this weird quadrilateral, has some kind of color behind it rather than this plain one. Okay, so this is called layering. It's really helpful while making details and making like I said, various other things, like I say for every example. But yeah, okay, so I think the salting is working. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes for this to work, because you need to let it completely dry. Do not rush it. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm just gonna show you, I'm gonna keep this aside, I'm gonna show you what I originally did, even though it does not look that great. So this was the wet on wet technique, this was a flat wash, and we also looked at color lifting. And I did not complete layering here, but layering is here. Wet on dry is something like this. You can see the difference of how things start to cuddle together, but here they don't. We saw blending, we saw the dry brush, like we saw here. The blooming again hasn't dried completely, but it's something like this, where it starts to separate water and pigment to create a sort of blooming or a cauliflower effect. And then my favorite is salting. So what this does is basically separates out pigments. You can see it reduces like a very beautiful unique pattern at every go. So since it's not completely dry, so I'm just gonna hold it, but I hope you really enjoyed the session, and I hope this was helpful. You keep on, you know, practicing this, trying out. There's a lot more color left in your palette, and I'm pretty sure it is for you as well. Do try out different kind of stuffs. Do try these techniques again, maybe on a different kind of paper, to figure out how different paper makes the color and makes the techniques look different. And yeah. Oh, and I really hope that you're subscribed to my newsletter and my Pinterest, because I'm going to post a lot of stuff out there on Pinterest. Not so much, I think, on Instagram. Let's see how things go. And yeah, I hope you receive my emails and it makes you smile a little bit when you do. And I hope that this video was helpful to you. You are free to share my mailing list form to anybody that you feel might benefit from this, but I really want you to be exclusive for this video, so try not to share it with somebody. This is exclusively made just for you. And yeah, happy creating. Have a great day or great evening or a great night and a great week ahead. Bye bye.